Welcome to the Kickass Midlife Method podcast, and I'm joined by some women from the community on what today is an eclipse day, actually. And today we're talking about understanding how to phase your nutrition and training in midlife so you can free yourself from the diet mindset because there's more than just losing body fat. There are different phases, and the more you understand this and understand what phase you can realistically be in according to what's going on in your life, the more comfortable and secure you're going to feel about it. So what we're going to do, cover the four key phases really, which is body fat loss, muscle gain, maintenance, which is a really important one that everybody gets wrong in midlife, and performance. What each phase means for you in terms of input and outcome, why maintenance is an active strategy, not a kind of do nothing, and how your life circumstances and being really reflective on what's going on in your life should also influence the phase you choose rather than just thinking, I want to lose body fat when it's actually not realistic at the time. So, what I mean by a phase is that different outcomes require different inputs. So, loss, reducing body fat, build, which is increasing muscle mass and strength, maintenance, which is where you stay as you are, and performance, so fueling your body to achieve a specific physical goal. Each of those require a different strategy. So phase one, body fat loss. So a lot of you are in here for body fat loss. Now, as you go through the program, you may discover that that phases into something else. Either it phases into maintenance because you've lost a certain amount of body fat, or you are really busy, or it's holiday, particularly around now, and you'd go into maintenance, or intuitive. Or at some point, you might want to build muscle, even more muscle, which doesn't mean you'll bulk because it's impossible as a midlife woman to bulk, but that requires a completely different nutritional strategy. And if you are a runner, for instance, and typically you've just gone out and run, but actually you like doing half marathons and 10Ks, then that requires a whole different nutritional strategy also. So knowing which phase you're in can just help you be a bit more relaxed about it rather than trying to perform whilst trying to lose body fat. It just doesn't work. You've got to have like one phase or the other. So when you're using body fat, the aim is you lose body fat, not weight, whilst protecting muscle. So a couple of times you might hear me say to you, it's great that you're losing weight, but you're losing it too quickly. And what this indicates to me is you're not eating sufficiently. And you don't want to do that because you lose muscle. That slows your metabolism down. It risks your muscle for active aging. There are multiple reasons you don't want to do that. So you need a consistent calorie deficit for body fat loss. It's not about skipping any food groups, any meals. It just allows you to lose body fat whilst eating sufficient protein, carbohydrates, and fats. So on this program, and everybody should really be doing a moderate calorie deficit, because if you lose fat really quickly, and I'm sure there are some women on this call who in the past have lost weight really, really quickly, and you think, great, or you're ill and you go, oh, well, the plus side is I've just lost loads of weight, so that's great. It's not great because you've lost muscle, and that will slow your metabolism down. And that means it's harder and harder to lose weight as you get older because your muscle's not there. So muscle drives metabolism. So carbohydrates also to support your training, consistency over perfection. So it's not about doing something for 2 weeks and then go, great, I've lost weight, loads of weight, and then going just not do it. It's about consistency all the time. So strength training remains essential in this because you want to lose your body fat but maintain and start building muscle. So yeah, goal is fat loss, not muscle loss. And then phase two, muscle gain. So there are maybe a handful of people in the program who are at the phase where they've lost enough body fat and they're actually in the muscle performance, the muscle gain. So this is when you actually need to give your body the resources to build. Now, sometimes somebody on a muscle gain, we put them into that and you'd have a surplus of calories over your maintenance, and most women go, oh my God, I can't eat more calories, because people freak because you've been taught for years and years and years and years, cut, diminish yourself, smaller, 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 and actually to actually create shape and to build a body and body confidence that will allow you to feel confident in how you look, feel, and move for life. It's about putting on muscle. So depending on your starting point and your experience, you either might be eating on maintenance or moving into a small calorie surplus. So 200 to 500 more than you would normally eat to maintain in order to give you sufficient calories to actually create muscle. So that's, as I say, there are the people that have gone into that phase. I'm sure they won't mind me sharing that they freaked out and they thought that actually it would mean they put on weight and they put on body fat, and their bodies are just, completely, even though sometimes their bodies stayed the same, but sometimes they've put on weight, you would think that they'd lost loads of weight because they've just changed their shape. Structured resistance training, sufficient training intensity, again, that comes with experience of doing the other phases first. Progressive overload, adequate recovery, and patience. It actually takes a long, long time to put on skeletal muscle. So, for any of those people who've been in the program for a while, who've been tracking every week their skeletal muscle mass, will see that it goes up very slowly. So you might be worrying about, oh my God, I'm going to put on loads of weight and loads of muscle. I'm going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Demi Moore when she did her GI Jane. Honestly, it takes such a lot of hard work, so I really wouldn't worry about that. If you could do that, most people would be quite jealous of you. But, so that's again a totally different phase. And then maintenance. So this, I think, is probably where quite a lot of women probably sit initially after body fat loss. So it's not an absence of a goal when you get to maintenance. So as you lose weight, so say your aim was you wanted to be 3 kilos lighter. What that means is your body no longer needs quite as much nutritional intake as you did when you were 3 kilos lighter. So you won't miss that extra food because actually your body's lighter. You don't need that much to fuel it to do your general day-to-day stuff and your exercise. So it's a deliberate, intentional phase, not a kind of, I've lost weight, hey, game over, I can do what I want. It is actually a maintenance phase. So yeah, as I said, strategy, not a holiday. So you're eating approximately the amount of energy your body needs to maintain whatever you reach, whatever you get to. All the macros still matter. It's not like you can forget about eating a balanced thing of macros. It's not like you can forget training. You absolutely, at this age, have to acknowledge that strength training is here for life. It's not like you do it for a short space of time to get into shape and then give it up. It's there for life. Maintenance is a really important phase. And so I would say sometimes, even if which we'll get onto actually, even if your aim is body fat loss, there are some reasons why you might go into maintenance, even though your actual goal target at the moment is body fat loss. And we'll get to that. And then performance. So if, for instance, you're someone who trains for marathons or a cycling event, or you've got a hiking challenge, so we've got some women in the community who are training for long distance cycling, marathons, half marathons, all sorts of things, then you'll have to let go of the body fat loss phase at that point because you need to fuel to help your body perform. And again, that's a completely different strategy. So slightly similar to the strength gain, but a little bit different in terms of usually it requires more carbohydrates and more fast release carbohydrates, which typically in midlife you kind of want to avoid, but you absolutely have to do it if you're performance training. So to give you an idea, I think I had 10 times 30, I had 300 grams of carbohydrates the other day in one day, which is a lot in order to fuel. I haven't put on weight because it's fueled my performance. But you have to be very careful of the performance phase because if you don't eat sufficiently and you don't recover sufficiently, what your body will do is turn to muscle and burn your muscle to drive your performance. And obviously that's the last thing. The number one thing we don't want to do is lose any muscle at all. You need to actually train to have the energy to actually perform, so you end up not feeling like, oh my God, I can't do this, this is rubbish, I'm rubbish, and it affects your mood, and it's simply because you've not fueled enough. So give your body what it needs. So what happens, and I see this often when you don't own your phase and are not aware of the phase, is you get stuck in this no man's land. And therefore you feel like no matter what you do, you feel like, oh, it's shit, I can't do it. Like you say you're trying to lose body fat, but you're eating in maintenance because of what is going on in your life, and therefore you feel like you're failing at body fat, and actually you just need to own the phase. So you say you're focusing on performance, but don't feel your training, and actually secretly in your mind, without realizing it, you're actually focusing on body fat loss, and therefore you're trying to do performance and not managing that either. So you're not managing to lose body fat and you're not managing to perform either. Or you say you're maintaining, but actually you stop paying attention completely, and then you get really fed up because you start putting on weight again, and therefore you get fed up there. You say you want to build muscle, but you don't trust the process, and you still keep trying to eat less, and therefore you never build muscle. So it's really frustrating for people because they think nothing's working. And actually, it's not that nothing's working, it's just that you haven't fully reflected and said, this is the phase I'm in. I'm going to own it. And the benefit of that is it makes you feel really comfortable and secure because you can be like, okay, I'm going to let go of all the rest because I know that the next phase, that's what my focus is going to be, and I'll get there. But I'm just going to focus on one thing because midlife women, I'm sure all of us here juggle like crazy and we think we can do everything, and we can do pretty much everything, but it's not good when it comes to goals because you just get split focus and therefore you actually feel like a bit of a failure because you can't split your focus on these things and actually succeed. Yeah, so as I say, ownership creates security. So if you imagine knowing exactly what you're doing and why, it makes such a difference. So if you're maintaining, you don't have to freak out because the scales aren't dropping. They're not supposed to. If you're building muscle, you let go of being terrified of eating more because it's part of the strategy and you trust the process that you're building muscle. Training performance, you don't have to earn your carbohydrates. I had a bit of a barney with someone on Instagram the other day who was saying about I get on a holiday, so I'm exercising now so I can eat more gelato. And I was like, no, don't eat, don't like train to like give you calorie surplus. It's not the way to do it. Training performance, you're fueling for it. And if you're losing body fat, you understand that in a body fat loss phase is not forever. It's a short phase, strategic phase where some structure and sacrifice is needed, but it's not forever. So you can feel like it's not like I don't have to, I'm not stuck in this phase forever. It's just a really short phase. You implement the strategy, you look at the data of your tracking, you use it, you lose the body fat, you move on into maintenance. It's simple. Take the emotion out of it and get that security of knowing where you are. So let's look at why you might think about the phases a little bit more. So I see these loads, particularly around this time of year, where women will say, yeah, no, I want to lose body fat. And actually, they've got like a wedding here, a holiday there, dropping their kids off at like university in September, this, that, and the other. And it just makes it pretty hard to actually maintain the routine to be able to do that. So it's also about looking really honestly at your calendar and going, is this actually practical right now to enter a body fat loss phase? That doesn't mean to say if it's not practical, you don't do anything. What you do is you use strategy to look at what your maintenance is for your current weight and you track that. And then the benefit of that comes from you see how easy it is to maintain, you track it, and say to lose zero point 0.2 or zero point 0.5 kilos per week, it's 250 calories or 500 calories a day that you have to create as a deficit. 500 is the maximum I'd ever put anyone on in this program. So if you then are tracking to maintenance and then you're ready to go into your body fat loss phase because you've got a clear, you've got a bit more time and you think, yes, this is a good phase to do it in, then all you have to do is look back at the data you tracked on maintenance and go, oh yeah, all I have to do is cut that and that. I'm not even going to miss it. And then, for a lot of people, it can be a coffee, and maybe what do I see normally? I see things like breakfast at like nuts and seeds and breakfast. And normally you can cut something like that, a coffee and a banana, and then you've done it. And you've not really had to change or miss out on very much at all. And then you're in the body fat phase. So choosing maintenance is more powerful than repeatedly failing at fat loss and then rolling out of the program or rolling out of your commitment to yourself about what you want to achieve because you feel like you're failing. And it's not that you're failing, you just are trying to juggle these two different things and it's not realistic for you at this time. Your body doesn't exist separately from your life. So it's really important to look at your life demands, what your life demands are at any one time. We've got aging parents, a lot of us. Some of us have got aging parents and kids, younger kids, all sorts of things going on or whatever's going on. And so just being aware of how much space that's taking up in your life and whether it's a maintenance phase is better at this time, what commitments you've got socially, work-wise, all of that. So how much capacity you've got for a body fat loss phase and in fact a muscle building phase. So owning that and tracking it, looking at your calendar ahead and going, okay, that's the phase I'm going to do this is the phase I'm going to do that, and working within that can be just really help you feel secure and confident. And then the ultimate goal for everybody in the Kickass Midlife method, which I hope everybody gets to when they leave the program, is that you become strategically intuitive and actually you don't really need to do any of these phases. You know exactly what your food and nutrition and strength training looks like to maintain, what it would look like to do your body fat loss phase and what it would look like for performance. And, you know, the more you build up that experience of your body, understanding of nutrition and physiologically the effect of certain nutrition on your body and the weights, the more actually you don't need any of it. I sometimes will go into a body fat loss phase because I think it's important now and again to do it to get your eye in, because you're used to what you eat and you're used to the amount that you eat. And so sometimes if you need to create a deficit, and for me, once you get to a certain point, I do track because I just want to be aware of, okay, what does that actually look like, and get my eye in. And the same for performance, I don't need to anymore because I'm really aware of how many carbohydrates I need. But for everybody, at some point, even if you become really intuitive, if you ever need a body fat loss phase, I think that's sometimes really important to track for a certain bit, to give you some data, and then you tune into what it looks like, and then you don't need to. But that comes with, you're not going to learn that overnight. For a lot of people, there's a lot of misinformation still in your head about diets. And I equate it, I'm sure I've had a call with some of you where I've equated it to, you know, when you used to have a jam jar full of old coins and you go, I'm going to take them to the bank to change them. You take them to the bank and they're totally out of date. You don't use that currency anymore. That's what a lot of the diet information is that we've all taken in our kind of age group that is just wrong. And there's a little bit of shaking that out before you begin to actually bank reality of what actually works. As the Kickass endgame is freedom, and to help you with that, you have to own the phase you're in. This is why I've chosen it, understand why you've chosen it. This is what it requires from me, and be honest about that. You can't go into a body fat loss phase and not track and be aware of your tracking and hope that it somehow works. It's not magic. It is about owning that. And when your goals and circumstances change, you know how to adapt. So that's a bit about phasing. So thanks for joining me on that. And I hope that that's given you some ideas or thoughts. So if any of you got any questions on that or anything else you want to ask me, how long does each phase last? It depends what your goal is. So if somebody wanting to lose a lot of body fat, then it really depends. Although I would typically, as a coach, always take people out of a phase after a certain number of months just to give you a bit of a refresh, because there is something about having to calorie track quite a lot, which is exhausting. There are certain hacks that I suggest that you do that some of us already know to help make it simpler, but there is a phase when it just becomes a bit like, oof. And actually what I like to see is taking people out of a body fat loss phase and tracking to also see how much is embedded intuitively so that you don't actually need to, and you start feeling a bit more confident in your own choices without having to track it all the time. So there's a little bit of that. Cool. If there's no other questions, love you and leave you. Nice to see you all. See you on the next one. Bye.